Welcome to the Strange Story Podcast, where we hear, share, and tell true stories of the unexplained. I'm Mark Marinaccio, and each episode of this podcast features a guest, someone you probably know from the world of the unexplained and paranormal. These guests share one of their own experiences with us, their own strange story as it happened to them. Like many of you, I myself am a paranormal enthusiast and experiencer. Now I'm bringing the relationships, contacts, and information that I've gained over the course of my 20 years making paranormal television shows to you. This is the Strange Story Podcast. My guest today is someone you all know, Grant Wilson, from the original and the reboot of Ghost Hunters, the television show. Ghost Hunters was the first paranormal television show that I ever produced, way back in season 3. And working with Grant and being a part of so many investigations all over the world was truly an eye-opening experience. If you're at home, grab a blanket, sit back, and curl up on the couch. If you're in the car, keep both hands on the wheel and enjoy today's ride. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's the Strange Story Podcast, so I want to hear your strange story.
Okay. So, well, there's so many. You know, Mark, there are just tons. But I like the stuff that kind of pushes the envelope a little. You know what I mean? Like for example, I mean, a lot of people know me from Ghost Hunters and Chasing Ghosts, but my interests lie in everything paranormal. And it's the non-run-of-the-mill stuff that gets interesting, where stuff overlaps. For example, I remember one case in Connecticut. It was myself and another investigator and then a trainee. And we were doing this bum rush technique where, you know, you're sitting there investigating, not much is happening, and then you just jump up and investigate a place you haven't been investigating recently. And typically that's when you find some activity. And that's typically when, you know, the concept of an attic or a basement being really creepy and haunted, that stems from this, where if you bum rush into someone's house, the entities there who are maybe afraid of you or don't know you yet will move to a place like the attic or basement. Anyway, the place we hadn't investigated in a while was this bedroom. So we walk up to the doorway of the bedroom, and looking in the bedroom, we see that, you know, there was some space, and then the bed in the room that was butted up against the right wall, and then some space between the bed and the far wall. And between that, in that space between the bed and the far wall, there was this black shadowy figure standing there. And the trainee that was with us said, "Nope," and took off and ran down the stairs. She wasn't having any of that. And then the investigator and I entered the room, and I walked around the bed right up next to the shadow, and I was able to put my arm through it. So I passed my arm through this shadow back and forth a few times. And then out of nowhere, this shadow ran around us, around the bed, out the room, and down the stairs. Pretty cool experience. But weeks later is when it got weird, or weirder. We were back there, and I was getting this trainee to kind of getting her to confront what she had experienced. Like, get back up there, get on the horse, you know, let's do this. And so I sent her up to that room up there and had her just kind of walk around and come to terms with it. So she was up there for a little bit, and then she came running downstairs, and she told me a very interesting story. She said that while she was up there in the room, she was standing between, now pay attention, between the bed and the far wall, and she looked back at the doorway, and there were 3 shadows standing in the doorway, one of which ran off and went downstairs, and the other 2 started walking into the room, and one of them walked around the edge of the bed and started putting its arm through her, passing it right through her, and of course that freaked her out, and she ran around the bed, out the door, and down the stairs. And if you pay attention to the details of that story, she wasn't experiencing a ghost, and we weren't experiencing a ghost. Well, not a traditional ghost. I had to explain to her that, hun, that wasn't a ghost. That was me from, a couple weeks ago coming up and putting my arms through you, because she didn't know what we had done in that room. She left. And so I like stuff like that because humans like to put things in boxes. And so you think, oh, there's a shadow in a house that shouldn't be there. That's a ghost. Well, technically, you're right, but it wasn't a dead person. You know, some kind of shadow or echo of us and what we were doing there a few weeks before. And there's actually a lot of stories like this that anyone who's experienced the paranormal or investigated it for a while has a story like this, at least one. And I don't know, is that strange enough, Mark?
Definitely strange enough. It definitely fits the definition of a strange story. But what do you have, like, what was going on in the space at the time? Like, were there any atmospheric conditions or any mental conditions? Like, what do you think was it the space itself? What could be the sort of impetus to that situation happening?
So that's a good question. And the other stories that I have that I could probably classify, there's typically almost no evidence of anything paranormal happening. Anyone who's been investigating for a while, you get a knack for it. You know, you just kind of feel like, oh, that room's got activity or that room's got activity. You just kind of get a sense, and without digressing too much, you just kind of get that vibe. And I'm not psychic in that way or anything, but I found that in situations where you have these possible, like a temporal anomaly, there's almost no indicator. The best indicator is usually some kind of air pressure change or a temperature change, maybe in that exact spot, but it's really hard to have the right piece of equipment at the right time. In fact, when we were on Ghost Hunters filming at the Mount Washington Hotel, we were in the bedroom and we didn't think anything was going on paranormal wise. But upon listening to our audio, we got a 1.5-minute long EVP of the princess there. And it made us feel like we were the ghosts. You know, we were just saying, hey, princess, are you there? And she's like, of course I'm here. Where are you? And she couldn't find us. She even said, like, I don't find this amusing. And she said, the conversation ended because she went to go get security. But when we were there in the room, we thought it was dead, that there was nothing going on. So I don't know. I mean, I've talked to physicists about this, and, I would ask them, can you just postulate on what type of environmental residue there would be if something like this happened? And all they can really speak of is stuff from the quantum realm, which the laws that apply there don't really apply to our realm. So it's all just speculation and hypotheticals, because no one's experienced that in a place where it could be documented.
I guess, so the question for me, and I guess this is probably, I know why my interests continue in this subject, is what is there a recreatable intention in the spaces to help experience that sort of situation? Meaning, if it's a temporal anomaly, if it's an interdimensional anomaly, if it's a connection with the afterlife, what is going on in that space at that time that's opening that doorway, so to speak, or allowing that glimpse?
That's the big question. That's the big question is if we could recreate this or stimulate it or supply it, if we found the catalyst, whatever, then obviously we would be doing this every day.
Do you think that's why people do this?
Well, people do it. People investigate for millions of different reasons, but a lot of them, what I would call a ghost hunter, is typically out there just to have an experience. Very few of them really kind of care how or why they have the experience. They just want to have one. But the people who are really, digging up, rolling up their sleeves and digging deep would be the paranormal investigators. And it's because the more truth they have, the better they can help people. So if it's if it's a temporal anomaly, they want to know that, not to prove that temporal anomalies are real, but they just want to be able to have the right information to help the client. I think we need more people who are smarter than us that know how to understand what's going on, know what to look for. All I can really go on are trends or what I've read or studied in science journals or conversations I've had with physicists and things like that. But there are some potential indicators, like if something were to, theoretically now, if something were to enter our dimension from another, technically the concepts like if there's something new in this space that isn't part of the balance of our space, it would mess things up a little bit. Like if something were to move through a portal, so to speak, or whatever, into a different time or a different dimension, technically there would be a compression of air because something's new there that wasn't there before. So there might be a slight temperature increase, where in their dimension it might be a slight temperature decrease because there's kind of a vacuum left. There's too much. When you talk to the physicists about it, you realize how complicated it is. But to me, honestly, the thought of some kind of temporal echo is a lot easier to grasp than continuance of our personality, which is funny because people are more quick to say it's a ghost instead of a temporal anomaly, where I think the temporal anomaly is more plausible.
Well, why do you think that is? I mean, it's getting away from people who like to investigate or have experiences. There's obviously a massive amount of people who are interested in the unexplained and the unknown, and like you said, who want to call something a ghost. Why do you think people are so interested in this?
Well, I'd say because it's the last frontier, really. I mean, I think shows like Ghost Hunters and the others, we just touched a button that the whole world was ready to have pushed, and that is just let's make this something we can talk about. And there's been good and bad from that, but I really feel like it's that unanswered question. People want to know what happens when we die. I mean, everything most people do in their lives is for fear or excitement about what's going to happen once we die. And unfortunately, I think that keeps people from truly living sometimes. But there's so many.
I always wonder what they would do with it. Like, right? So you have your investigation, and suddenly in that moment you've uncovered the secrets of the universe. What do you do with that information? Where do you go from there?
And who's going to believe you? Number one. Yeah, and number two, I personally feel like I don't. People ask me all the time. They'll say, are you ever going to prove the afterlife exists? And that's not my goal. In fact, I honestly think we're probably better off not knowing, because if it was black and white, think about what that would do to us in our society. And I'd hate to see people like, oh, everything's better than it is here after this life, and they just jump off a cliff and all that stuff. And you know what I mean? That would be bad. But people are curious. I think when they lose somebody that they love, I think that's the crux of it. They lose somebody they love. They don't know if it's goodbye forever, and there's hope that it isn't. And honestly, humankind has a habit of hindsight, of looking backwards. And when someone goes, you always ask yourself, did I do enough good with them? Did I spend enough time with them? And I think there's a little bit of them hoping that wasn't it,
and that they're still happy, right? That they're still happy somewhere.
And that's what I get a lot of, Mark. People come and say, hey, I just want to know my dead Uncle Fred is okay. And I got to be honest, in this situation, no news is good news. Like, I mean, if we pass on and we have, I don't know, the whole universe, all creation at our fingertips, you bet your butt I'm putting on a rocket pack and cruising around the universe and flying through the sun or doing whatever. and I don't want to personally, I don't want to be that person that's anchoring my loved ones here. I'd rather say, we had a heck of a run. I'll see you on the flip side, and go. But I always ask people, look, if dead Uncle Fred, if you're really worried about him, you have to ask yourself, because we don't know what it takes for him to come back and talk to us. You have to ask yourself, look, you have to assume the worst. Does it cause dead Uncle Fred pain to come back and let you know he's okay? And let's assume it does.
Are you pulling him back and making it hard on him because you're sucking him back into something it's not comfortable or not?
Right. Or, he's sitting there staring beautiful paradise or whatever it may be. I'm not making any assumptions here in the face, but he doesn't want to leave because you're over there moping, So you got to ask, if it causes him pain, is it worth it to let it, to know if he's okay? And the answer is always no. So just let him go. That's where I stand. But some people clearly, in my experience, are confused and can't move on, or don't even know they're dead, or, there's 100 million reasons. I think people have this mentality that you're chained to a location, a la Beetlejuice, or you're chained to a person. I've got a parasite on my back, and it's just not that way. Humans don't act that way. They follow their passions and their dreams and their desires. And if I died, my son was still alive, you bet your butt I'm sticking around until I know he's okay. You know what I mean?
So what
I'm not technically haunting him.
Tell me, let's switch gears so we don't go down that rabbit hole. What's exciting and interesting and new in the field for you right now? What's getting you excited?
Well, I'll tell you, it's the fact that we have inventors and we have scientists. You can feel the hunger in the science community for there's like an underground faction in it that's trying to get the community to say we need to stop ignoring this stuff and factor it in a scientific way. Like, there are literally millions of people around the world who are having these strange experiences, and it's the opposite of science. To sit there and ignore this, to intentionally ignore it, is the way it's been. Like, science will sit there and tell you there are infinite dimensions where anything is possible, but then you say, what about a ghost? And they don't want to listen to you. Like, what if this is a dimension where ghosts work? It could be anything. But I'm seeing that in the scientific community. I'm seeing people stepping up. I mean, with this whole Oumuamua thing, with this long needle-shaped interstellar object that came through our system. I mean, a gentleman from Harvard is not backing down. He's saying, look, all the stuff you're just kind of writing this off, and you're not doing real science to figure out what this thing is. You're just assuming and assuming and assuming. And because you're scientists, no one's questioning it. But what you're saying doesn't add up. This thing is not a comet. This could be something, an actual abandoned ship or something from another civilization. And if we just laugh it off, we'll never know. When the prospect of actually even just entertaining that idea, the implications are huge. So you're seeing a lot of this. And honestly, we've talked about certain paranormal trends or phenomena, and we've just now starting to see them pop up in scientific journals as having some validity to them. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited that the fan base loves the shows where we're investigating, walking around in the dark, but they're hungry for the real information, for the next level. And that's what I'm excited about, because, the future of this, we can only watch shows of people walking around in the dark so much. We have to start trickling in information above and beyond that, and people are totally ready for it. And that's what I'm excited about.
Do you think any of that science has made its way into, the general population's hands, that they're using in their experiments and investigations and techniques? That anything that you think is interesting and new, or Is it all just the same sort of try it, see if it works?
Um, Unfortunately, I think a lot of the way, as the science and technology trickles down to the actual investigator or paranormal enthusiast, unfortunately, it comes in the form of equipment. And a lot of people are of the mindset that, subconsciously, that, the more equipment, the better. And they're not quite sure why that piece of equipment is beeping or lighting up. But as long as it does, that means I'm making some progress. And I think that's a step backwards. Like,
Oh, really?
when you sit down and talk with someone, if you're sitting there in the same space as them, you don't need $100,000 of equipment to talk to them. You just need patience. And while equipment should be devised to validate and to expedite communication, it's right now it's just getting in the way, and I think people need to be aware of that. I think if you use a piece of equipment, you need to understand exactly what it was originally designed for, exactly what it's measuring, exactly how it works, and you need to have a consistent environment. You get these. I watch people at events all the time. They'll turn on the K2 meter, and the lights will, after the test phase, the lights will light up, and they'll be like, "Oh, are you here?" And they instantly assume it's a ghost. The K2 is not a ghost detector. It's an electromagnetic field detector. And you have to tell the entity what it is. You have to teach them how to use it. You know what I mean? You have to give the entity time to use it, to learn how to use it. A lot of people basically, you go on an investigation. All you really need to do, metaphorically, is screw in a screw, but they're hitting it with a jackhammer and a bulldozer and a sawzall when all you need is a screwdriver. So they get distracted. They get the equipment hypnosis, and that, I think, is where I'm excited that people are building this equipment, but they're not doing a good job of introducing it to the public correctly, or thoroughly testing it, or explaining it. It's just kind of like, hey, here you go. And all these apps are out there, and they all say for entertainment purposes only. So it's good and bad. It's tough. It's tough.
So is there any one piece of gear that people are starting to get a handle on that you like, or that you see having potential, or is it's all the same category?
So there's some more stuff that I'm working on in the audio field, to build equipment that can't talk about yet, but there's some stuff that's going on out there.
Mysterious.
I'm trying to get people with the know-how to look at it the right way, and to look for the right stuff and build the stuff in the right way. And I know Steve Gonzalez is doing the same thing with infrared and night vision and all that. He's working very closely with some companies doing that. But you know what? The old Spirit Box that came out, I hated that thing, man. You turn this thing on and it just scans radio frequencies, sounds like that, and it's a migraine inducer and what I call an audio matrixing fest. So it's just, your brain can only handle random noise like that long enough before it starts to hear what it wants to hear. And I hated this thing. And I'd sit down with people and I'd say, they'd ask questions. Can you say the name of someone in the room? And they always say like a short, quick name, like Pat, Chris, because those are the sounds that are coming out. Hated it. And then the guys that were working at Stanley Hotel, Connor Randall and Carl Pfeiffer and Michelle Tate, they invented a technique called the Estes method, which kind of changed my thinking on this. And what they do is it's a version of the Gansfield experiment, kind of sensory deprivation, where they put a blindfold on somebody, and then they put headphones on, noise-canceling headphones on that same person, and only that person can hear what's coming out of the spirit box. So they're hearing and DJ bits and bytes and all this, while the other people in the room are having the conversation, asking the questions. So the person who's got the headphones on, they can't see or hear anything. I mean, all those people could have gotten up and left, and she wouldn't even know that. The person in the headphones, they wouldn't even know. And so when you start asking questions, this person with the headphones on, they repeat what they hear. as accurately as possible. Um, and so, you start saying, did you work here? Yes, I was a sailor. Coming from this person, and this conversation starts to become less than coincidental. And so that's an interesting piece of equipment to me that harkens back to the way things were done a long time ago when you had Edison and these guys that were trying to build these devices to contact the other side, which Edison may or may not have done. I mean, there's some speculation based on his diaries. He says he's done it, and then he says, I want to do it. But that device in particular is what I'm keeping my eye on. And I'm doing things like, okay, let's put 2 or 3 in a room, at the same time and see if we can get them to talk to each other. And we're having some success with that. So.
That's really interesting. I haven't seen that before. People putting multiple people going through that process at the same time. That just sort of blows my mind because it makes sense. It's logical, but no one's ever thought of it or done it before. That's pretty. Well,
and there's a technique in ghost hunting where if you're not getting cooperation from the entity you're trying to talk to, then you talk to, it's gossiping they call it, and they talk to all the entities around it. And so in that scenario, you could do that, and if they find they can talk to each other easily, like it starts to really get interesting.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, lastly, let's talk about What the Fetch. Your YouTube channel. It looks like it's going really well. What can you tell? What do you want to say about it?
So, What the Fetch was just kind of a project that was stemmed out of some frustration after 5 years of trying to help a lot of different networks know what the fans want next, or to take paranormal to the next level. They kept telling me it was too smart for TV, which I understood. But
by the way, does everyone know where What the Fetch comes from? I do. I experienced it a lot on this production on the road.
What the Fetch, the phrase is something I picked up while I was in Utah, and it's just to avoid saying the F word, and being on TV, it had a similar satisfaction in saying, and I think the production company actually bleeped me a couple of times when I never said the F word, but whatever, dramatic. But it's just something I used to say on the show all the time. They actually made T-shirts of it and everything, and I named it that because there's more to my interest in the paranormal. And if you follow the paranormal at all, you can't stick to one camp. I wanted to talk about What the Fetch, everything weird from AI to UFOs to crypto to government conspiracies. I wanted to talk about everything. And so, but I have a very good and loyal, loving fan base. And so I wanted to meet them where they expected me first. So I started putting out these talking head videos of just concepts and how I view things. And people seem to really, really like it. And it's nice because I can do it how I want, when I want, and with the right kind of vibe. I was going to write a book, but you can't get in the kind of humor and personality that I'm trying to get across in a book, And the videos lean less towards spooky and more towards geeky. So they're a lot of fun, non-threatening, but you should hopefully watch a video and turn it off and think, okay, yeah, I'm a little bit better now. I've learned something, I'm thinking a little differently. Yeah.
So, and where can everyone find it who doesn't already know?
You can just go on YouTube and look up my name. It's youtube.com/the Grant Wilson, because regular Grant Wilson wouldn't back down. I don't know who he is, but so I had to make it the Grant Wilson, which sounds pompous. But
you could have said not the regular Grant Wilson.
Yeah, that other Grant Wilson.
Grant, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. As always, it's always a lot of fun to talk. And, you and I could talk for hours and hours about some of these things that we go down the rabbit hole on. So I always appreciate your time.
Yeah, we have, haven't we? So yeah. I appreciate it. Anytime, Mark, you know it.
Hopefully more to come.